Welcome to the Legal Insurrection podcast. We have your updates for the week of September 21st. In this episode, we have updates on the election. We have exploding pagers, a potential third debate between Trump and Harris. My name is Kimberly Kay. I'm the editorial and operations director with the Legal Insurrection Foundation, and I'm here with our president and founder, Professor William Jacobson. So let's go ahead and get started. I think first and foremost, we're recording on a Saturday, and we are learning that Harris has agreed to a third debate, and I believe said she would not do another debate, but has agreed to a third debate on CNN. And I'm not sure that it makes much sense for Trump to take her up on that, especially not having already had a debate on CNN.
Yeah, I mean, she agreed to a debate on CNN. Normally, that means the other side has offered it. Trump hasn't offered it. Okay, so she agreed with herself. Okay, basically. So there's no agreement. It's she wants another debate, and I think that raises very interesting questions as to how her team internally, not what they tell the public, about how brat she is, but what they're seeing on the ground and in their numbers. They obviously feel the need for another debate. They think she won the first one, and I think by all accounts, at least however you judge debates, she won it. Whether how much that helped her is disputed, but I don't think there's much doubt that she did better at the debate than anyone expected. And Trump, as we know historically, and we've cited these figures, never polls well in terms of who won the debate. So she wants that. And I don't think he should give it to her. She could have agreed to a third debate at Fox News. She skipped it. I don't see any reason to go running back to CNN while they did a decent job with Joe Biden back in whenever it was. It seems a century ago, June. Why did they get a second one? I think if Trump's going to do it at all, it's Fox or nothing. But I don't even think he should do it. I think that my sense is that things are moving against her. She's peaked. She's not. She may hang on. She may hang on, and she's running out the clock. But she's peaked, and I don't see why Trump should give her another potential bounce, 10 days before the election,
or any airtime like that either. Because, like you said, it would be October 23rd, which is, the 11th hour here in campaign terms. And I just don't think I don't think it would be smart of him, unless they have something else up their sleeves. I don't think it would be smart of Trump or his campaign or his advisors to agree to this for many of the same reasons. And also just because why give her the airtime? It's clear that he's polling well, and, she may have done well in that debate, but who's to say that she could pull off the same performance yet again? Because I imagine there was a tremendous amount of work that went into that. And even though we tend to think that she won that debate, there were many post-debate analysis, even with CNN, that suggested she may not have come across as strong as many of us thought she did. And so I just don't think he stands to gain anything from agreeing to this. And I don't think it hurts him to say, forget it either.
Yeah, I don't think so. So I don't know what his team's thinking. I don't know what he'll do, but I don't see why he should agree to it. I think that my sense of this election, I'm not predicting, who's going to win. My sense of this election is that, we've still got, 7 weeks left? That's a long time. Things are not going her way. Many polls are coming out in key swing states that are showing it either tied or she's up 1 or 2%. And if she's up 1 or 2%, we know from history that means she's behind. Okay.
Right.
Hillary and Biden were polling much better at this point in the campaigns in 2016 and 2020. I think it was Corey Lewandowski who's been brought back to the Trump campaign. I don't know if I saw him saying it or somebody attributing it to him, that Trump is polling better versus his presidential opponent now by far than he was in the prior 2 cycles. And we have to remember the polls, I think it was in Wisconsin, and I might be off slightly on this. The polls showed Hillary ahead by 5 or 6 points. And I think they showed Biden ahead by the same. And Trump pulled it out barely against Hillary and lost it barely against Biden. But the point is, in a place like Wisconsin, he did, I think it was 4 or 5 or 6% better than the polls said he was going to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Trump's history. So I say things are moving in your direction. Uh, the sheen is off, her rose. She's trying to run out the clock, and I think she's realizing now that she started too early. Don't give her a second chance. Don't give her a second bounce 2 weeks before the election.
Well, especially because it seems to be resonating far and wide too that she keeps promising all of these things that she will do eventually, or she will do on day one, as though she's not at all part of the current administration. And I think that's just something you might have been able to pull off, kind of, if you were in the last couple weeks of the campaign. But to have been saying that for months and act like you're not the sitting vice president and had nothing to do with the current disarray, it's just so disingenuous to a point that it is insulting. It's not almost insulting, but it is insulting. So I don't know. I don't know what they have left up their sleeve. I don't really want to know. I hate to ask those questions of the universe because I don't want to find out.
We always talk about October surprises.
Right.
I can't imagine what they're going to pull a surprise on Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy is the most scrutinized guy in the world. He's had multiple state and federal attorney general task forces literally poring over everything he's done in his life. I can't imagine what the October surprise could be with Trump. With her, who knows? Okay.
Ooh, there's a lot of nasty there that the media is choosing not to run, things that are not necessarily rumors about her past and how she got to where she was politically and how she climbed the ladder in unsavory ways. And those things aren't rumors. There's plenty of people talking about them. Mainstream media won't, but there's plenty of people who have firsthand knowledge of these things that talk about that. And were there when she was an aspiring ladder climber years ago.
Yeah.
So
I think the look, Trump could have done better at the debate. He could have gotten a bounce out of the debate, and he didn't. How much of a bounce she got, I don't know. It's a little hard to say, but she probably got something. But I think that I think Trump has this election where he wants it to be. Again, I am not saying that's a guarantee he'll win. And there are a lot of factors against him, mostly media coverage.
Right.
But all things considered, considering 3 indictments, a criminal conviction, Stormy Daniels, whatever, attorney general,
bookkeeping
suing
issue.
for
That's
hundreds
all
of
that
millions.
was.
When you consider everything, why is he even still in the race from a polling perspective? And that's got to be worrying the Democrats. So something's not making sense here. If they really thought that Harris was far ahead, if they really believe their own BS that their spokespeople say, you would think they would not want another debate. So I don't see that it's at this moment in time in Trump's interest to do it. And I don't think anybody's going to hold it against him. And maybe at most he says Fox or nobody.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. Completely agree. So shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about the latest assassination attempt on Trump. I mean, the fact that we have had 2 assassination attempts of a former president and current Republican nominee in less than 60 days is just, it should be mind-blowing. But I think this goes back to, what you've discussed at great length in Operation Demoralize in some ways, which is that I believe there's been a concerted effort over the years to make everything a monumental event to the point where now nothing matters. When I was a kid watching the news cycle, if something like this happened, we'd be hearing about it for months. I mean, months. Every single night, that would be the leading story on the evening news, and they would be talking about updates, or they'd be interviewing other people. It would be a consistent part of the news that we would be hearing. And instead, just like even the first time, it had what, a 36-hour shelf life, and then they moved on from that, and the same thing has happened again. And it's something to me that, I mean, obviously it's a huge ordeal. There's many things involved with that, and questions about security and security decisions and whatever. But when I look at all of this, what concerns me just as much as the assassination attempt is the fact that no one is near as bothered by something like this as I think that we ought to be. And
No, I mean, the
go ahead.
astounding thing, particularly about the second assassination attempt, even more so than the first, is how quickly the media segued to blaming Trump.
Oh
Okay. So
yes.
the incendiary rhetoric of the guy who's been shot once and almost shot a second time, the guy gets blamed. Okay.
Right.
How corrupt and terrible is the corporate media in the United States that they manage to turn a story about somebody who's been, verifiably inflamed by the Democrats, who's repeating verbatim their campaign slogans, trying to shoot Trump. And who do they blame? Not the people, not Kamala, not Biden, not all the Democrats who say that Trump is the single biggest danger to our country we've ever had, is the new Hitler. No, they don't get blamed. The guy who's almost shot a second time gets blamed. That's how. So not only have they mostly dropped it, but to the extent it's still in the news, it's in the news with the media blaming him for him being shot at twice.
Mm-hmm. No, I, which is, I mean, it's just textbook gaslighting, right? And to me, it's also textbook narcissistic behavior, but in mass. You know, they're the ones who are going to create this terrible situation, and then when something finally happens because of the situation that they've created, then they're going to immediately point the finger and act like you had it coming. And if only you had done what they told you needed to do all along, this could have been avoided, which is just insane. Like, it is truly insane. Um, if there were to be something major that did happen, let's just say they were more successful and Trump was seriously injured, I mean, is anyone even going to care? Is it even going to be in the news? And that's what I was leading up to, is that I've seen many things on social media which kind of make me chuckle, but it's true. It's like, I'm tired of living in historical times. Like, can I just live in a normal time? Because this particular portion of the timeline is a little bit out of control. So I don't know. I mean, I'm very glad that once again he's safe. I don't even know that I care to. I have been down so many rabbit holes. This whole BlackRock rabbit hole, though, I don't even. don't, I don't even know what to make of these things anymore. But at the end of the day, I'm at least very glad that he's safe.
And I don't think the risk is over. I don't,
I don't either.
he's wanting to do public appearances, rallies, things like that. But I don't think the danger is over. I think, there are people who have been driven into such a frenzy over the supposed danger Trump poses to our democracy, to our nation. We may not survive him. Project 2025, whatever that is. One of these days, I want to actually read it. Okay, and
It's nothing. Like, it is truly nothing.
people, I've got to tell you, people are completely crazy on the left in their Trump derangement syndrome. I mean,
It's
and it is no surprise that twice already they've been driven to, in this campaign cycle, driven to try to assassinate him. So I do not think the danger is over. I don't know that the Secret Service is up to the task. They seem to be, the Keystone Cops at this point. Hopefully, they've got their act together. But I do not think the danger is over at all.
Well, and another, I mean, a concerning component in all of this too is, are any of our institutions of protection ready for any serious threat? When we're in a place where they're selecting people based on skin color and not based on service and merit and things like that. I mean, if I'm in a situation like that, I don't care where you came from. I don't care what color you are. I care about who's going to be the fastest, best shot. Like who's going to neutralize the threat the quickest. And I think, I mean, obviously, this is just a microcosm, but it is something that I have thought about probably more than I should. It's that this is literally destroying the integrity of so many institutions that we used to be able to pride ourselves on as a country. Um, but yeah, I completely agree. He's not even close to being out of the weeds. And even if he wins this election, he's not out of the weeds. I don't see that there's ever an end to this, at least not if things continue as they are. Um, so let's move. Exploding pagers. This one, I mean, I didn't even know people still had pagers. I mean, to date myself a little bit, in high school, everyone had a pager before anyone had a phone. Um, but I was not aware these were even a bit of technology that was still in use. Can you fill listeners in who might not be aware of that on this
Yeah.
story?
So uh, apparently, so pagers do exist. I've never had one, although I think I want one now. um, I'm looking into, and I may write a blog post about this asking for reader suggestions. I'm looking into uh, what technology is out there really for emergency purposes.
Right.
Will pagers work when cell phones don't? Um, what alternatives are out there? And what I'm gathering just from 15 minutes of Googling is the old two-way pagers are not really a thing anymore, where you could
Mm-hmm.
essentially text with somebody. But that's what I want. Okay. So what I'd like to do is get each family member a pager, and we live hundreds, some live near, but some hundreds of miles away. And whether that in an emergency might be viable. But of course, the pager service needs to be up. So it's not really independent. But I am definitely looking into pagers. I want to find out more about them. I'm not sure a one-way pager would work. I'm not really sure how that would work from what I want it to do. But pagers are a relatively simple technology. They don't run over the internet. They use wire. They use essentially FM broadcast uh, technology. So it's basically like radio technology. We've all seen them. I think the biggest group that still uses them are doctors in hospitals. Okay, I think that's the one big market that exists. So I want to look into that. But anyway, so Hezbollah, the Lebanese based Iranian funded and backed terror group, which is really an army. It's not like 100 guys with Kalashnikovs. I mean, they have they're more sophisticated than almost the most armies in the world. Israel thoroughly penetrated their cell phone system and turned, and this is a warning to everybody, turned the phones into spy devices, and were able to. That's why for almost a year now they've been picking off people in cars. They know who is in the car, in this car. They know who is on this motorcycle, exactly when they are. And so the Hezbollah chief even went on TV and told all the Hezbollah supporters, turn off your phones, put them in a metal box, because I guess phones
Mm-hmm.
can be used as spy devices even when they're off. Bury them, get rid of them, do not use them. They are using this against us to know who's doing what and where they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So Hezbollah troops in the field ditched their cell phones, and they came up with the idea of using pager systems to communicate with their key members. They're supposed to have like 30,000 military members, but the top 5,000 got special pagers that Hezbollah procured through a European company. Um, and it turned out that that was a Israeli front group. The Israeli, I assume Mossad or whoever their intelligence agency is, set up a fake um, pager manufacturer. Okay,
It's
specifically
brilliant.
because they
It's so
knew
brilliant. I love it.
they knew Hezbollah, and they knew this years ago. They didn't like create it 6 months ago. Many years ago, they created this and had it there, waiting for Hezbollah to show up. Okay, basically, because who else uses pagers in the world? Okay, nobody. And so they manufactured these pagers, which were procured by Hezbollah for military purposes. So you can ignore all the nonsense out there about this being booby trapping, civilian pagers. That's not what happened. These were, it's like buying a tank. You can't just go to the store and buy a tank. You couldn't just go to the
Right.
store and buy these highly secure, combat ready pagers that were sold to Hezbollah for them to distribute to their key terrorists for use in a conflict with Israel. So what Israel did is they manufactured these pagers and they managed to hide, we believe, who knows what it'll be, but within the battery, they managed to hide high explosives that were non-detectable, some sort of plastic explosive that was very sensitive to heat, okay, and put a special malware on the pagers. So Hezbollah gets these, distributes them, some like within recent weeks, but over the last 6 to 8 months, distributes about, I think, 4 to 5,000 of these to all their key operatives. And Israel breaks into, or probably already had control of, whatever the central server is that maintains the messages. And what they did, and there's a lot of speculation as to why they did it, when they did it. You'd think they would do this at the opening of a war, but they did it before, and there's a lot of speculation that Hezbollah was getting suspicious about these pagers, and they either use it or lose it. And so what they did is the pagers, the malware on the pagers, when it received a special code, it would rapidly accelerate the battery, the heat of the battery, which would set off the explosives. And so what Israel did through the central chain, central server, at one time, at the exact same time, sent out that special signal and code to all 4 to 5,000 of these pagers, and they started blowing up. They would ring, okay, and they would ring 3 or 4 times and then explode. And what that meant was that a lot of people, where do you carry pagers? And they did it in the middle of the day. They didn't do it at night where it might be on your nightstand. They did it during the day, and there's videos in stores of people's hips exploding because where do you put a pager? You put it on your belt or you put it in your pocket. And so you're getting your groin blown off. Or you had it in your hand and you're getting your hand blown off. Or reportedly, for about 500 of them, they heard it beeping and it was a message from the boss, from Nasrallah, and they put it up to their face to read the message and it blew up in their face. And reports are that 500 of them are now blinded. So, and this all happened at exactly the same time, all over not just Lebanon, but also Syria, including to the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon. Why did he have one of these special Hezbollah pagers? So anyway, that's what it is. It knocked out of commission, either through death or severe injury, probably close to 4,000 of the key people in Hezbollah. Okay, there were a very small number of injuries to civilians. These explosives were powerful enough that if they're on your hip or a foot from you, they're dangerous. But there are videos of people in stores 2 feet away who didn't get injured. Apparently, there was a girl whose father was a Hezbollah member and had one of these pagers, and it went off, and she got killed. But and that's obviously regrettable. But warfare is never perfect. But relative to 3 to 4,000 of them being hit, a handful of civilian injuries in the way war is conducted is extremely safe. And so, I'm happy to talk about the reaction, but that's what went down. And then Israel had also done the same thing to the walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah. Again, not walkie-talkies like to chat with your kids, military grade walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah. The next day, oh, we don't have pagers anymore. Let's use our walkie-talkies. and 20 people were killed and 400 injured when Israel blew up the walkie-talkies that people were using. And then, so no more no more cell phones, no more pagers, no more walkie-talkies. How do we communicate with each other? Well, we have to meet. And so the top 20 to 30 commanders of the special forces of Hezbollah met in the basement of a residential building. They always do that. They use civilians as human shields because that's the only way they could communicate. Israel caught wind of it and hit the building, and essentially the entire upper echelon of Hezbollah's special forces, including the two people who were involved in the U.S. embassy bombing in Lebanon and the Marine barracks bombing. People who were on our wanted list. One had a $7 million bounty on his head, the other 5. They were killed also. So thank you, Israel. And that's where we are. And so Hezbollah has suffered a severe blow, but they still have tens of thousands of rockets, and they still have another 25 or 30,000 military members. And as we speak, Israel's heavily bombing weapons depots and rocket launchers because it has been announced by Israel they are expecting a major attack from Hezbollah within 12 to 24 hours. They've declared the north of the country an emergency zone. They've suspended all air flights in the north of the country and closed all beaches. So by the time people see this, there could be a full-scale war. And certainly Israel has improved its position, but we shouldn't kid ourselves unless they have something else up their sleeve. And I have a feeling, I think I know what it is. There's going to be a major missile and rocket war.
I mean, which of course is unfortunate and no one wants to see, but I mean, it's brilliant. It's just strategically and tactically brilliant to be able to pull that off in a way that minimizes collateral damage.
Years they planned this for years. I mean, this is this is like if you've ever read like Jean Le Carré novels, okay, where the KGB will set something up in the hope that 5 years from now a certain person will walk in, okay,
right,
and and I mean that's really what it is, and so we'll see what happens, but that's really, I mean, beyond imagination. The feeling I had when I heard that, it reminded me, and I was only 8 years old, so I don't have a vivid memory of it, but of the 6-Day War when Israel surprised the Arab countries who were poised to attack, and Israel preemptively attacked and wiped out their air forces basically in a few hours. And that's kind of how I felt when I heard this, that they pulled something off that nobody even thought was possible. And while Hezbollah still has tens of thousands of missiles they can fire, their ability to project forces into Israel, which is what they were always bragging they were going to do. Hezbollah always bragged that their special forces would take towns in northern Israel in the opening days of a conflict. That capability, I'm not saying it's gone, but has been severely diminished.
No, I mean, like I said, everything about it is completely brilliant. And I mean, I don't know who's listening, but everyone is always listening to these things. There have been so many times where I've seen an ad for something and I can't remember what it was or I can't find it, and I just start yelling things close to it to my phone, and guess what? The ad pops back up again. I mean, we know that now, right? They're always listening. Your phone takes pictures without you knowing.
Gmail scans your emails. They claim it's anonymous. They claim they don't know whose it is for the purpose of serving up advertising to you.
Right. Supposedly. I mean, might be the stated primary purpose.
That's what they claim. And that's why, if you ever click on an ad anywhere, it will be months before you stop getting served that ad.
Yes. Yes.
Facebook is like, I always regret if I ever click on anything on Facebook because you'll see it in your feed forever. And, who knows if it's anonymous, but I've got a theory as to what's going to happen, and we'll see if it happens. Israel accomplished what it did with the pagers and the walkie-talkies by getting into the Iranian supply chain. And whatever Hezbollah has, it's via Iran. Okay.
Right.
Apparently, these walkie-talkies and pagers were also procured via Iran, but through a European, dummy company that Israel set up. And Israel has had a major effort to get inside the supply chain of Iranian missiles and supply chains of nuclear program. I'm hoping that the same sort of malware, the same sort of codes that Israel managed to get into the walkie-talkies and the pagers are in those sophisticated missiles sitting, beneath 30 feet of rock in hills in Lebanon that Hezbollah plans on firing. So I'm hoping that the next big shoe to drop is all the missiles start exploding inside their tunnels. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But if Israel did get inside the supply chain and has been inside it for years, things might get very interesting.
Yeah, very quickly too. Very quickly. It's such a crazy. Thank you for explaining all of that. You're so much better at telling stories chronologically without taking 20,000 rabbit trails than I am. So
yeah, no,
but I
I
mean,
spent
it's like a spider.
a lot of time on this
No,
rather than doing actual productive stuff.
yeah. It's fascinating though. It's just crazy to watch some of these things unfold like that because we haven't had them, at least as I'm thinking about it. I mean, that kind of story of espionage like that. I mean, that's all Cold War stuff. That's not things that we've really seen in quite a while. At least not on the national stage that have made it into the American press. I'm sure stuff happens in other countries. But
Yeah,
anyway,
and
so
one point, I'm not the only one to make this, is as gruesome as it sounds,
mhm.
and as heartless as it sounds, Israel is better off maiming these people um, than it is killing them.
Yeah,
And the reason is, and a lot of people recognize this from a military perspective, that if you kill somebody, it's over. Okay?
yep.
If you maim them, they've got to be taken care of. They've got to go to the hospital. You've got to transport them. So
And it's
it
a
is a
psychological impact on everyone
psychological
involved, and it's
impact.
such a deterrent. Because death would be better in some
You
cases.
know, exactly. And at least the videos I've seen, believe me, death is better than having your groin blown off, at least in my estimation. And again, that's gruesome. It's macabre, but it's reality, which is Hezbollah now has 3,000 to 4,000 people it's got to take care of,
Yeah.
and who strain the hospital resources, who will strain the logistical resources, and again, that's not a pretty picture, but it is the reality.
Well, and it also serves as a deterrent in some ways for people who may consider um, joining up. Now, I know culturally things are very different than they are here, in many ways, but and the way these things are viewed, life and death are handled differently than they are here too. Um, Still, I think there's many effective
Yeah.
deterrents
I
as
mean,
a
the
result of it.
mullahs and the Hezbollah and the Hamas are constantly telling us that they love death more than we love life. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
what are you complaining about? Okay,
right,
so
right.
and I do think one thing that's also very interesting. I don't know that I've heard a single Arab country other than Syria say a peep about the pagers. Okay, they all hate the Iranians. They all hate the Hezbollah. They know what they are. They may be scared of them. Okay, uh,
Hmm.
the reaction in the Arab world, at least to the extent as an English speaker, I'm able to tell from media, has been very restrained. The reaction has been more hostile in the American media and the left reaches of the Democrat Party than it has been in the Arab world.
Hmm.
And I think if Israel ends up militarily defeating Hezbollah, and perhaps getting rid of Nasrallah, because if you look
Hmm.
at their pyramid chart of the organization, he's almost at the top alone now. Almost everybody below him in the pyramid has been eliminated in the last 7, 8 months, particularly in the last few weeks. And I think there will be cheers in the Arab world. I think they hate him. I think they know what he is. I know that the people in Syria hate him because Hezbollah, although they love Hezbollah on American campuses, they were the most brutal. They were Assad's, Gestapo. They were
Right.
Assad's, shock troops in torturing people in Syria, in killing them, in really brutal. And so I think there will be a lot of people very happy to see Hezbollah go down. The difference between Hezbollah and Hamas is in a friendly population.
Right.
Okay. Hezbollah
Right.
is not. I mean, Hezbollah is not the, by population, majority in the country.
Right.
Okay. They are an Iranian militia that has turned into an army, which essentially runs the country through terror and through killing people.
Yes.
Okay.
Disappearing people. Yeah.
Disappearing or outright assassinating them. Your people may remember a few years ago, and they managed to not hush it up, but cover it up. There was a warehouse near the Beirut port that exploded, and it had gazillion tons of ammonium nitrate. What I'm forgetting his name, used to blow up the Oklahoma City building, and he had a truckload. They had thousands of tons of this, and when it blew, it was like a nuclear explosion, and that was all Hezbollah. Okay, never any accountability. That's where they stored things. There were rumors that they were going to put a lot of that stuff on a ship and try to sail it into an Israeli harbor and blow it up. And I would not be shocked if something like that happened now. Okay, that Iran might try that, or Hezbollah. Something we're not thinking of, just like they didn't think of the pagers. There may be things that the Israelis have not thought of that they'll try. But if Israel defeats Hezbollah, I think it will be a happy day in most of the Arab world.
Oh, completely agree. And like you said, I mean, I think that's a very important point too. It's just because something's favored here doesn't mean that the country of origin wants to have anything to do with them. Much like the quote unquote Palestinian refugees, no one in the Arab world wants them either, because everywhere they go, they just leech off of everyone and turn nice places into gross encampments. I mean, there's very much a stigma there that's well earned, that is so far, it's like the way that it's talked about in our country is so far removed from the reality of the people dealing with it, that it's almost not even the same thing. So that's a very good point. Lastly, any thoughts on the current state of the election and campaign? I know we kind of talked about that when we were talking about this debate situation and whether or not Trump should agree to it. But do you have anything to add to that?
No, just that I think it's still a horse race. I think it could go either way. I think my sense is that it's moving in Trump's direction. She had her convention. She had an entire, 6 to 7 weeks of absolutely glowing, fawning media coverage. She had her debate bounce, and it's still basically tied. It's still basically
Right.
tied. And when, it's like when I would watch a football game and your team is hanging in there when they shouldn't be, okay? And it's
Right.
now 5 minutes left, and you should be down 3 touchdowns, and you're only down a field goal, and you're feeling pretty good about yourself, okay? And so I think this is moving in Trump's direction. I think it could go either way. I think it's going to come down to a few swing states. And I think it's going to come down to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, a few others. And, I read some analysis or saw it for the guy who does CNN's polling, Harry Enton. And he basically said that, it's basically tied. Okay. But if you do the polling, I forget the term he used, the polling miss from 2020. So if Trump does better versus the current polling to the same extent he did in 2020, he wins in a landslide.
Right.
If the polling miss is more like the midterm elections in 2022, when there was a prediction of a red wave, then she wins, not necessarily in a landslide, but she wins. So if Trump outperforms the polls to the same extent he previously has, this guy Harry Enton was saying it's going to be a landslide. Because if she's up 1% in Wisconsin, she's behind. We all know that, in the polling, up 1% in the polling. If she's up 1% in Pennsylvania, she's probably behind. The wild card is, will Democrats outperform Republicans with the mail-in ballots like they did in 2020 to such a great extent that it wipes out a lot of other things? And that's something I don't know the status of that right now. But that's where, if Harris wins, it's going to be based on the ground operation of getting mail-in ballots, of collecting ballots as opposed to votes. And from what I can gather from the TV and from the internet, Republicans are still very heavily reliant on an election day turnout, and that's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Republicans are just so terrible about all of the get out the vote efforts in ways that Democrats never are. I mean, this has been the subject of much debate, much contention for decades now, at least as long as I've been involved in politics, is, this idea that Democrats will go anywhere, everywhere, even to your doctor's office to have them register you to vote. And Republicans just don't want to do that. And I understand that. Republicans tend to think very differently about things and don't want to be disturbed. They don't want to be in people's business. They just expect people to show up. But the stakes are really, really, really high in such a way that Republicans would do well to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more proactive with some of these things than they've ever been. But, we're also here at the end of September, so.
One thing I do want to revisit, because I know we're running short of time, is the whole pager thing and all of that. People should not kid themselves. This gets back to the prepping that we've talked about a lot in the past. People should not kid themselves. The Chinese government, the Russian government, probably not the Iranian government, although maybe the Iranian government could probably shut down our economy in a heartbeat if they wanted.
Easily.
The hope is we could do the same to them, and therefore there's mutually assured destruction, and nobody does it. Okay.
Right.
But and I'm not saying the Chinese government has implanted explosives in our places, but I wouldn't be shocked if they have sent people across the border to be sleepers. But that's this whole thing that happened in Lebanon with the pagers and the walkie-talkies should be a wake-up call to our readership and our listeners that you need a plan B, because our grid could go down, our systems could go down, and that's why I'm thinking about pagers. You still got to rely on the pager company, okay? Satellite phones, the problem with satellite phones is they're very expensive.
Yes.
And so that's my parting shot, is that we should not kid ourselves. We are at risk also.
Oh, 100%. We've been lulled into a terrible state of complacency. I mean, I think I've seen that across the board with so many things, is that even people who care and people who are knowledgeable and people who are otherwise intelligent, it's so much easier to pretend like life continues to be the way that it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, when that's just not the world we live in anymore. And people would rather be comfortable than deal with the discomfort of dealing with reality. And that's especially where we are now. I don't live in fear. I would never condone or encourage living in fear. But we have to be wise, and you have to be prepared, and you have to realize that our country is far more vulnerable than I think we're probably even aware of in so many ways. I mean, not just in physical security, border security, but like you said, and the grids, they could shut our grid down, and then what, And so these are things that I know I think about a lot. I know Professor Jacobson thinks about a lot, and we have at least some kind of plan for. And it doesn't take much to do something, but a plan beats no plan every single time. Because the point is, at least you've thought it through to what would you do in these extreme situations. And of course, it might not be a perfect plan, but it's better than zero preparation at all. So yes, not to frighten anyone, not that we have any inside knowledge. There's nothing like that going on. Just be wise, be discerning, and be okay with being uncomfortable with the fact that the world is a dumpster fire right now, and we just have to plan accordingly. There are no assurances that things will turn out well, or even if Trump is elected, that somehow things are going to be safe and secure and everything will return to some state of normalcy. Because the thing is, the people who are perpetrating the divisiveness and all of these terrible things still exist regardless of who's in office. We have all of these, we don't even know how many people have been let into our country. I imagine the majority of them are not friendly people who have been let into the country. Um, where are they going? Why are they here? And what are they up to? Again, no need to live in fear, but Trump getting elected doesn't change the fact that those people are now wandering around here. So, regardless of the outcome of the election, we just have to be realistic with what we're dealing with here, and plan accordingly. So, 100% agree. And also, don't be afraid. Be happy, find joy, be at peace, but have a plan. And like buy rice or beans or something, and maybe some chickens. So, anyway, but thank you all so much for joining us in this episode. And Professor Jacobson, as always, thank you so much for your time. For this episode, more information on this episode you can find at legalinsurrection.com/10. And you can find just about everything we have talked about. We have many different stories that cover all the topics that we discussed today on legalinsurrection.com. It's a blog that's updated daily, many, many, many times daily. We have a fantastic group of people there that work to keep our readers apprised of what's happening in the world, and to be as careful and impartial as we can, and also have some fun. We like to have fun. We like to laugh at things when the situation allows. So definitely check us out. And if you have enjoyed what you've heard, please share, please like, and do all the social media things that help get this out. So again, thank you, and have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week.